The universe begins with silence, but silence is never empty. Out there, in the deep vault beyond the orbit of Neptune, beyond the haze of the Kuiper belt, something whispered across the black. It did not announce itself with a blaze of light or the comforting dust trail of a comet. Instead, it slipped into the solar system like a shadow crossing the floor of a cathedral, a silent presence, real and undeniable, yet fleeting, almost designed to go unnoticed. Astronomers did notice. Their telescopes caught a faint glimmer, a body moving too quickly, too freely, to be native to the sun's long embrace. It was catalogued, measured, tracked. Yet, as the data accumulated, a more disquieting truth emerged. This was no ordinary fragment of rock or ice. Its orbit was wrong, its path too sharp, its velocity too unforgiving. It did not belong here. And in that realization, the human imagination quivered. For if the solar system was a garden, carefully tended for billions of years by gravity and time, then this was the footprint of an intruder. An interstellar object, forged in the furnaces of some other star, cast adrift through the gulfs of space, and now brushing against the domain of Earth and Sunday. But there was more, a lingering unease. The signals it gave off were sparse, oddly clean, stripped of the usual signatures of natural wanderers. No plume of gas, no faint blue jet of sublimated ice. Instead, a body that seemed to absorb the sun's warmth and glide on, as if propelled not by chemistry or chance, but by intent. Science thrives on mystery, but mystery cuts both ways. It seduces, and it terrifies. Could this be mere stone and shadow, a fragment of another solar system's chaos? Or was it something else, something made a machine older than our histories, passing by without a word? That was the question. That is the wound left open. The discovery did not arrive with trumpet blasts or breaking news headlines. It began, as so many great scientific stories do, with a faint point of light noticed by a survey telescope in the quiet hours of the night. The Tailless system in Hawaii, the asteroid terrestrial impact last alert system, had been built not for poetry but for vigilance. Its purpose was simple and pragmatic: to scan the skies for incoming threats, objects that might one day endanger our planet. Its cameras swept the heavens like patient watchmen, taking frame after frame, seeking the faint trails of motion hidden among the fixed stars. On a spring night in 2020, one such trail emerged. A speck shifted from one image to the next, not remarkable in itself. Dozens of these were found every week, asteroids grazing past Earth, comets wandering back from the cold. Yet this one carried a peculiarity, one that would only reveal itself when orbital calculations were attempted. Astronomers plotted its trajectory against the familiar ballet of the solar system. At first, the dot seemed ordinary, another rock threading through the vast planetary lanes. But then, like a chord struck off key, the orbit declared itself foreign. The velocity was too high, the path hyperbolic, not elliptical. It was not bound to the sun at all. This was no citizen of our system. It was a traveler, cutting across the planetary family with the indifference of a stranger passing through a village. The International Astronomical Union gave it a designation, 3I 2020Q, 1 Atlas, the third known interstellar object ever detected, following the enigmatic Oumuamua and the later comet Borisov. The 3I marked its alien status, a badge of origin beyond the Sunday. The word Atlas honored the vigilant telescope that first caught its trace. Behind the names and numbers lay a quiet wonder. Humanity had looked into the deep night and found, once more, proof that the stars do not keep their secrets to themselves. Material from other suns was moving among us, whispering hints of other worlds, other histories, other fates. And with that recognition came the ripple of awe. The the sense that this detection was not only a scientific footnote, but an existential encounter. Somewhere, light years away, this body had been forged. Perhaps it was torn from a young planetary system, flung out by the gravitational quarrels of newborn giants. Perhaps it had wandered for eons through the interstellar dark, absorbing starlight like a memory. And now, impossibly, it had arrived at Earth's doorstep, caught in the gaze of human eyes for the first and only time. Discovery is always more than a matter of instruments. It is a collision of chance and preparation, of machinery and wonder. The Atlas survey, built to protect us from the threats of near-Earth asteroids, had stumbled upon something far greater, a messenger from beyond, as if the universe had casually thrown a pebble into our pond, watching the ripples unfold. For the astronomers who first noticed it, the excitement was tempered with urgency. This object was fast, too fast, to linger long in the sun's gravity. They had only weeks, perhaps months, to gather what data they could. Already, its trajectory was pulling it back toward the deep dark. Like a ghost passing through a lit doorway, it would soon be gone. The race began. Who would study it? Who would claim its mysteries? Could its brief light curves, its faint reflections, its motion against the stars, reveal more than its silent appearance suggested? Thus, what began as a faint shift of pixels became the seed of one of the strangest scientific questions of our time. Was 3I Atlas just another piece of interstellar debris? Or was it something no telescope had been built to expect? At first, many assumed the discovery was another comet icy debris set adrift from some forgotten corner of the galaxy. That was the safe explanation, the one that fit comfortably into existing models of celestial wanderers. But as the observations accumulated, comfort gave way to astonishment. Astronomers tracking 3I Atlas quickly realized its movement did not echo the familiar patterns of comets or asteroids within our solar family. Its speed was unsettling, a momentum that resisted the gravitational tug of the sun more strongly than anything local should. Even for an interstellar visitor, it moved with a swiftness that felt almost deliberate, its path cutting cleanly through the solar system like a blade of glass across water. Most comets betray themselves with extravagance. As they near the sun, their icy surfaces warm and sublimate, releasing plumes of vapor and dust. These gases fan out into brilliant tails, the signatures of volatile hearts exposed to light and heat. Yet 3I Atlas showed no such flourish, no glowing trail, no outgassing jets, just a muted glimmer, as though the sun's fire had found nothing to ignite. This absence was more than curious. It was disruptive. Without sublimation, the models used to predict its spin, mass, and surface became uncertain. It was like trying to read a stranger's face with all expression erased. Even its brightness curves seemed to shift in odd rhythms, suggesting a shape elongated, perhaps tumbling, yet never revealing itself fully. The comparisons came swiftly. Oumuamua, the first interstellar object detected in 2017, had been equally evasive. It too had shown no tail, no ordinary cometary breath, and its strange acceleration away from the sun had spurred whispers of alien technology. Now, only a few years later, 3I Atlas arrived with echoes of the same enigma. Two intruders, both unwilling to obey the familiar rules, both slipping away before definitive answers could be drawn. The scientific community split between intrigue and caution. For some, the anomalies were a puzzle waiting for natural explanation fragments, shaped by collisions, compositions resistant to heat, trajectories distorted by unseen forces. For others, the very oddness of it all rang louder than explanations could soothe. Why would two consecutive interstellar visitors behave so far from expectation? The strangeness was sharpened by the fleeting nature of the event. Night after night, telescopes strained to capture data, yet the clock was against them. Every hour, the visitor receded further, dimmer, more elusive. It was as though the cosmos had tossed a riddle into human sightlines and then pulled it back, daring us to solve it before the ink of its trail vanished. For centuries, astronomy has been a dialogue between the expected and the unexpected. Planets move as Newton said they would. Stars die in ways Einstein foresaw. But sometimes the sky whispers a contradiction, a reminder that the universe is under no obligation to conform to human categories. 3I Atlas was such a whisper, a body that looked like a comet but refused to act like one. A traveler whose presence both confirmed our place in a wider galaxy and unsettled our understanding of what that galaxy contains. It was not simply that it moved differently, it was that its refusal to behave within the parameters of comets or asteroids struck at the heart of astronomical certainty. In that refusal, scientists felt the first tremor of shock, the creeping realization that they were staring at something stranger than they had dared imagine. When the first analyses settled, the question of naming arose, a small but telling moment in the life of a cosmic discovery. To name is to frame, to shape how the story will be remembered. The International Astronomical Union, guardian of celestial designations, chose the formal tag 3I 2020 Q1 Atlas. The prefix 3I was not trivial. It placed this body in an exclusive lineage, the third identified interstellar object in human history. Before it, only two had passed into our records, Oumuamua in 2017 and Comet Borisov in 2019. With each, the word interstellar had carved itself deeper into astronomy's lexicon, shifting the discipline from speculation to lived reality. The Q1 indicated its order of discovery within that year, a bookkeeping precision in the midst of cosmic wonder. Yet the appended Atlas carried human resonance. It honored the survey telescope whose unblinking gaze had first recorded the faint trace. Atlas Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System was designed as sentinel to catch near-Earth threats. Now it had caught something far older, far stranger, something that slipped past the sun not to strike us but to remind us of a larger stage. To the public ear, 3I Atlas had a weight both mechanical and mythic. The number and letter spoke of catalogues, of data and mathematics. But the word Atlas recalled the ancient titan condemned to hold up the heavens, a figure of burden and endurance. There was poetry in that coincidence, a robotic telescope bearing the same name as the mythic giant, now carrying the weight of discovery across human awareness. Within research circles, the name mattered because it marked continuity. The first object, 1I Oumuamua, had taught astronomers how little could be learned from fleeting visits. The second, 2I Borisov, had reassured them that interstellar wanderers were real, not singular miracles. The third, 3I Atlas, emerged with the implication of pattern that the galaxy was filled with debris and perhaps artifacts, crossing the gulfs between stars more often than anyone had expected. Yet naming also sharpened the stakes. To declare it the third interstellar object was to declare it alien, not in construction, but in origin. Alien to the sun, alien to our cradle. It tied this body irrevocably to questions of galactic motion, planetary birth, and the restless tides of star systems long vanished from view. In its name was a challenge to study it as emissary, not neighbor. Philosophers of science often note that categories shape thought. By naming it as interstellar, humanity unconsciously opened the door to speculation. If rocks can wander between suns, might machines? If natural debris can stumble into our sight, might intentional artifacts also glide this way? The designation 3I Atlas was not merely a label. It was a signpost, a reminder that our solar system is not sealed, that beyond our planetary dance stretches a web of crossings, migrations, and perhaps messages. So the name endured. Scientists spoke it in papers and conferences. Journalists folded it into headlines. Skywatchers whispered it under their breath, as though invoking a talisman of mystery. 3I Atlas. A string of letters and numbers, but also a reminder: the heavens are not ours alone. The discovery of 3I Atlas inevitably called forth the memory of another traveller, one that had already unsettled the foundations of astronomy. Oumuamua, the first interstellar object ever detected, had passed through the solar system in 2017 like a blade of light. It was smaller than the early estimates suggested, perhaps only 100 meters long, yet its elongated shape, sudden acceleration, and refusal to behave like a comet had shaken science to its roots. When Oumuamua slipped away into darkness, the debates had only just begun. Was it a shard of frozen hydrogen, sublimating invisibly? A thin pancake of rock, shaped by cosmic violence? Or something more provocative, a solar sail, a relic of technology cast off by an ancient civilization? The arguments flared across journals and conferences, unresolved, unanswered, left smouldering in the wake of its disappearance. Now, scarcely 3 years later, 3I Atlas appeared, another interstellar visitor, again cloaked in ambiguity. Unlike Borisov, which had displayed a classic cometary tail and reassured astronomers that nature could explain such wanderers, 3I Atlas leaned closer to Oumuamua in temperament. Silent, tailless, evasive. It was as if the universe had doubled down on its riddle, offering a second verse of the same haunting song. The comparison was irresistible. Both objects had slipped into human perception unexpectedly. Both had carried away more questions than answers. Both had unsettled assumptions about what interstellar debris should look like. And both seemed almost theatrical in their timing, arriving just as humanity's instruments became sharp enough to notice them, then vanishing before certainty could be claimed. Some scientists argued that the resemblance was coincidence, that the galaxy might naturally produce such objects, flung into the void during planetary formation, stripped of volatiles, left bare and inert. Yet the echoes between Oumuamua and 3 Atlas were difficult to dismiss. In their silence, their strangeness, their refusal to conform, they seemed to converse with one another across the void like two shadows glimpsed on different nights, hinting at the same hidden figure moving just beyond the firelight. For astronomers, this parallel was both thrilling and troubling. It suggested that Oumuamua was not a singular anomaly, not a one-time fluke, but part of a broader, more enigmatic category. The question sharpened: was this category natural, shaped by processes we had yet to understand? Or was it something altogether different, the residue of intelligence, the driftwood of civilizations scattered across the stars? The comparison between the two deepened the philosophical stakes. If the universe had now given us not one but two such visitors, then perhaps this was a pattern, not a miracle. And patterns, once glimpsed, demand explanation. In this sense, 3ITLAS was not merely a discovery in its own right, but a mirror held up to Oumuamua, reflecting its mystery and amplifying its unanswered questions. Thus, the memory of Oumuamua hovered over every observation, every calculation, every paper written about 3I Atlas. It was as if the first traveller had spoken a question into the silence, and the second had answered only with an echo, not a solution, but a reminder that the question itself was far from finished. As orbital calculations grew more precise, the strangeness of 3I Atlas deepened. Most small bodies in the solar system dance on elliptical orbits, bound in closed loops by the sun's gravity. Even comets arriving from the distant Oort cloud carry such paths elongated but still tethered to the star at their center. 3I Atlas was different. Its orbit was hyperbolic, not closed at all, a perfect mathematical curve that revealed its true nature. This was not a child of the sun, but a visitor merely passing through. Yet the details of that orbit carried more than just interstellar conformation. Its angle of approach was unusual, slicing across the solar system's plane in a manner inconsistent with debris native to our cosmic neighborhood. The eccentricity of its path was extreme, a measure of how violently it diverged from the gentle ellipses of asteroids and planets. To astronomers, this eccentricity was a signature, a fingerprint of its foreign birth. Then came the anomaly, the speed. At perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun 3I Atlas traveled at a velocity beyond the reach of ordinary gravitational capture. No matter how massive the Sun, no matter how finely tuned the orbit, there was no mathematical way to bind it. This was incontrovertible evidence of its exile from another star system. But for some, the trajectory whispered of something more. Its path was precise, almost uncannily so. It threaded between planetary orbits like a needle through fabric, never colliding, never straying too close. Though chance could account for such precision after all, the solar system is vast, and planets occupy only a fraction of its volume. The elegance of its passage invited unease. The question loomed, was this the blind throw of cosmic dice, or the intentional arc of something guided? Even more unsettling was the resonance with earlier anomalies. Oumuamua, too, had betrayed an odd trajectory, one that seemed to accelerate away from the Sun as though nudged by unseen forces. In that case, explanations ranged from outgassing to radiation pressure to exotic ices. None satisfied completely. Now, with 3I Atlas, astronomers found themselves watching another hyperbolic interloper, another body whose course resisted easy categorization. The orbital mystery struck at the heart of celestial mechanics, the very framework established by Newton and refined by Einstein. To calculate a trajectory is to predict destiny, and for centuries, planets and comets alike had obeyed those predictions. But here was an object that seemed to glide just outside the lines, obeying gravity yet suggesting something beyond it, as though hinting at another layer of rules not yet written down. For the scientific community, this was both exhilarating and unnerving. It confirmed that the galaxy is dynamic, that objects move between stars more freely than once believed. Yet it also posed a challenge. If such objects are common, then why do they appear so anomalous? Why do they resist the familiar signatures of comets, the comfortable models of asteroids? Why do their paths, though natural on paper, carry an air of deliberation when glimpsed against the backdrop of cosmic silence? In the end, 3I Atlas's orbit was both proof and puzzle. Proof that the universe is not closed, that fragments from other suns sweep through our skies. And puzzle, because in the elegant precision of its hyperbolic arc, some saw not only mathematics at work, but perhaps intention, the faint outline of a journey that might not have been entirely blind. The defining revelation about 3 Atlas was its velocity. Numbers, cold and absolute, told the story more starkly than any speculation could. As it approached perihelion, its speed exceeded the solar system's escape velocity by a wide margin. This was not a body that could be captured, not an asteroid that might one day return. It was a visitor, entering and leaving with the same inevitability as a cometary apparition, but without the leash of gravity to bind it. To astronomers, the implications were monumental. A speed of tens of kilometers per second might not sound extraordinary against the backdrop of cosmic scales, yet it was enough to sever any possibility of solar ownership. Gravity, the patient warden of worlds, had no claim over this intruder. It came from elsewhere, and elsewhere it would return. That realization was both liberating and haunting. On one hand, it expanded humanity's sense of connection to the galaxy. Material from other stars was not a theoretical abstraction, it was here, cutting across the solar system with indifference to our presence. On the other hand, its speed meant fleeting opportunity. No probe, no mission, no telescope could linger long enough to map it in detail. By the time the world truly grasped what it was already gone. Velocity also carried symbolic weight. To move faster than the sun's pull was to embody freedom, to glide as a pure messenger of the wider galaxy. Yet such freedom was not without strangeness. Its trajectory showed no hesitation, no irregular wobble of a body battered by collisions. Instead, it slipped with the clean assurance of a stone skipping across a pond, as if its course had been charted long before humanity's instruments caught it. The numbers pressed deeper into mystery. If Oumuamua had startled with its unexplained acceleration, 3I Atlas unsettled with its unyielding momentum. No jetting gases explained it. No faint coma betrayed hidden forces. It was simply fast, and it remained so, as if propelled by nothing more than its own history. Scientists speculated about its birth. Perhaps it had been ejected during the turbulent youth of a distant planetary system, flung outward by the gravity of giants. Perhaps it was the shard of a shattered moon, cast into interstellar exile billions of years ago. Whatever its origin, the speed it carried was the fossil record of that ancient violence momentum frozen into its being, preserved across light years, written into the mathematics of its trajectory. Yet the imagination refused to stop there. If nature could hurl such objects across the stars, then so could intelligence. What better way to send a probe, a relic, a marker, than to set it adrift on a course immune to capture, immune to decay? The velocity that marked it as natural also left open the possibility of the artificial. And so, as 3I Atlas slipped past, its speed became more than a number. It became a metaphor. For science, it was a measure of liberation from solar gravity. For philosophy, it was a reminder of impermanence, that even when the universe grants us a glimpse of its hidden travelers, it does so only in passing. The faster it moved, the more it resembled a message not meant to be held, but merely noticed, like a fleeting word whispered in a dream. Telescopes strained to pull detail from the faint, receding point of light, and what they revealed added further unease. The brightness of 3I Atlas was not constant. It flickered, dimmed, and brightened again, with rhythms that suggested irregular shape or tumbling motion. From those light curves, astronomers began to infer geometry, not a neat sphere, not a rubble pile asteroid, but something elongated, perhaps even flattened, a body with surfaces catching sunlight at odd angles. The possibility of elongation echoed Oumuamua's enigma. That first interstellar wanderer had also been modelled as cigar-shaped or pancake-thin, depending on how the data were interpreted. Now, 3I Atlas appeared to hum the same strange note, a shard, a plate, a sliver of rock, but not the rounded or lumpy profiles familiar to those who study comets. Its spin was equally puzzling. The light variations suggested a chaotic rotation, a tumble rather than a steady spin. But the exact rhythm resisted clarity. Was this the natural result of countless eons of collisions and gravitational nudges, or was it something less random, a balance altered by design or ancient use? The absence of a cometary tail removed the usual clues, leaving only the cryptic dance of light and shadow across its body. Some proposed a fractured nucleus, a comet broken by tidal forces near the sun, left as a fragment glinting with exposed surfaces. Others wondered whether its reflective properties hinted at a surface too smooth, too planar, as though it were less rock and more sail. Observations were scant, interpretations many. What unsettled astronomers most was how quickly the data resisted simplification. Normally, light curves of asteroids or comets yield to models of ellipsoids, to predictable equations of rotation. But with 3I Atlas, each new observation seemed to multiply possibilities rather than narrow them. The more closely scientists looked, the less ordinary it appeared. Even the faint glimmers carried suggestion of something unusual about its composition. It did not redden under solar radiation the way many outer solar system objects do. Its reflectivity, its albedo hinted at surfaces that might not match the weathered, carbon-rich crusts expected of such wanderers. A body that had traveled so long through interstellar space should have been darkened, scarred, dulled by cosmic rays. Yet here was an object with an unexpected brightness, as though something had preserved or renewed its skin. Shape and spin became more than physical descriptors. They became metaphors for identity. Was this merely an orphaned shard, shaped by the indifference of the cosmos? Or was it something carved, honed, or constructed, sent adrift with purpose? In every flicker of light across its tumbling surface, astronomers saw a question they could not answer. The telescope's eye had caught not just a rock, but a mirror reflecting human curiosity back upon itself, forcing us to ask whether the strangeness we saw belonged to the object or to the limitations of our own understanding. As astronomers pressed their instruments to the heavens, a new kind of evidence emerged, not in what was seen, but in the shadows it cast. 3I Atlas betrayed itself through light curves, faint oscillations in brightness as it tumbled through space. These flickers were the closest thing to fingerprints an object at such distance could offer. In principle, light curves are straightforward. As a rotating body presents different surfaces to the sun, its brightness waxes and wanes. The rhythm of those changes reveals shape, spin rate, even hints of surface texture. But the curves recorded from 3I Atlas were elusive. They did not resolve into the neat, predictable patterns of a sphere or ellipsoid. Instead, they seemed fractured, irregular, as though the object were a shard rather than a whole. The amplitude of brightness shifts suggested extreme elongation, perhaps 3, 4, or more times longer than wide. Some models even hinted at flatness, a geometry almost sheet-like, reminiscent of a sail more than a rock. Other astronomers cautioned against certainty. With such sparse data, interpretations were fragile, each hypothesis balanced on a knife's edge. Yet the possibility lingered. What if this was not a lump of stone, but something plainer, deliberately thin? Shadows added to the intrigue. Tiny dips in brightness suggested facets, edges, abrupt transitions between reflective and dark surfaces. Unlike the mottled randomness of asteroids, 3I Atlas seemed to carry surfaces that were stark, perhaps smooth, as though polished or fractured cleanly. Could cosmic erosion alone have sculpted such precision? Or was this the legacy of another process, something intentional? Astronomers compared the data with expectations from comets. A typical comet would have grown brighter as volatile ices sublimated, releasing dust that scattered sunlight into broad halos. 3I Atlas refused this script. Its light was sharp, its reflections clean, its body bare, no coma, no glowing mist, only the alternating shadows of a hard, silent surface. The mystery deepened when the flickers hinted at chaotic rotation. Unlike a balanced spin, 3I Atlas seemed to tumble, its axis wobbling unpredictably. Such motion could be the remnant of a violent past, a collision, a fracture, an ejection from its birth system. But to some eyes, it also resembled an object once stable, now long abandoned, left to drift and spin without correction. Like a ship with no pilot, it turned endlessly in the void. Data, always scarce, only sharpened the sense of riddle. Telescopes captured numbers, graphs, lines plotted against time, but behind each line was the same haunting question: were these shadows the scars of nature or the silhouettes of craft? For most scientists, the natural explanation held sway. Interstellar debris could take unfamiliar forms. Cosmic violence was infinite in its creativity. Yet the unusual geometry, the peculiar shadows, and the unnerving resemblance to a sail gave others pause. And in those shadows, humanity glimpsed its own reflection, the desire to see more than stone, to wonder whether a faint glimmer in the night might, against all reason, be the echo of another intelligence's passing. As the days of observation stretched on, one truth became unavoidable. 3. Atlas was a traveler that carried no visible breath. Comets, by their very nature, are dramatic. When sunlight touches their icy hearts, they exhale into the void, releasing vapor and dust that flare into luminous tails. These tails, streaming millions of kilometers behind them, are banners that reveal both their fragility and their origin. Yet 3I Atlas remained stubbornly silent. No plume rose from its surface. No delicate haze surrounded its body. Telescopes searching for the faintest signs of outgassing jets, halos, wisps, found nothing. It glided past the sun as if immune to its fire, as though the heat that awakens comets into brilliance passed through it without stirring. This absence was more than disappointing. It was deeply puzzling. For an object of interstellar origin, astronomers had expected volatility. Such bodies, forged in the cold vaults of distant systems, should carry frozen gases and ices. Contact with the sun ought to have boiled them alive, releasing streams of activity that would confirm their cometary nature. But 3I Atlas betrayed none of this. Theories sprouted in response. Perhaps it was sheathed in a crust so thick, so carbon-blackened, that the sun's warmth could not penetrate. Perhaps its journey through the galaxy had already stripped it bare, eroding volatiles over millions of years until only the skeletal core remained. Or perhaps, more unsettlingly, it had never been a comet at all, not ice, not dust, but something else entirely, built of sterner matter. The lack of a tail deprived scientists of their usual tools. Without outgassing, there were no jets to measure, no shifts in trajectory caused by uneven vapor release. Instead, the object followed its course with unnerving purity, as though driven by nothing but momentum. This purity, this refusal to behave, made it even harder to categorize. The echoes of Oumuamua grew louder. That first wanderer, too, had carried no tail, no coma, only an unexplained acceleration that defied conventional comet models. 3I Atlas now stood beside it. Another silent stone, another denial of expectations. 2 interstellar visitors, both rejecting the behavior of comets, both defying the categories humanity had trusted for centuries. Among astronomers, debates sharpened. Was this the new normal? Were interstellar objects inherently different, their surfaces sealed by cosmic radiation, their ices long since lost? Or was there something we were missing, some deeper principle, some stranger truth? The silence of 3I Atlas was not the silence of absence. It was the silence of contradiction, of a body that should have roared with vapor, but instead glided mute. That silence spoke louder than a comet's tail ever could. It told us that not every traveler from the stars will follow the scripts we write for them. Some arrive cloaked, withholding, carrying within their mute passage the suggestion that our categories are too small for the universe we inhabit. And so, as 3I Atlas passed the sun without a breath, it became more than an astronomical curiosity. It became a symbol of limits reached, of mysteries unyielded, of a cosmos whose riddles refused to be solved at a glance. In science, anomalies are not just curiosities, they are confrontations. Each time an observation defies expectation, it presses against the boundaries of the known, daring us to admit our ignorance. With 3I Atlas, the absence of a tail, the odd rotation, the peculiar shape, the hyperbolic trajectory, all these combined into a presence that felt almost adversarial. It did not behave as it should. It refused to be explained easily. For centuries, Newton's laws and Einstein's refinements had offered astronomers a kind of comfort. Planets, comets, asteroids, their orbits, spins, and motions could be predicted, described, and trusted. Even the most violent phenomena, from supernovae to black holes, eventually found their place in equations. Yet here was an object that slipped, however subtly, through those nets. Not because gravity had failed, but because the expected signatures of nature were missing. It was like a sentence half-written, a melody missing its final chord. Scientists debated furiously. To some, this was a natural fragment, an ancient shard of a larger body, stripped bare by eons of cosmic radiation. Its silence, its refusal to shine with vapor, was simply the exhaustion of time. But to others, the strangeness piled too high. Why should two of the first three interstellar objects discovered, Oumuamua and now 3I Atlas, both resist cometary identity? Why should both appear so geometrically peculiar, so unwilling to reveal their nature? Coincidence, yes, but coincidence stretched thin begins to resemble defiance. Even Einstein's legacy felt tested. Relativity could describe its path, yes, but it could not explain its purpose, if purpose there was. If the object's trajectory appeared too neat, too sharp, it was not relativity at fault, but our assumptions about what we were witnessing. Was it natural debris or something made? The equations remained intact, but the meaning behind the numbers shivered with ambiguity. In quiet moments, some astronomers confessed unease. To encounter something that challenges not the framework of physics, but the confidence of interpretation, is in some ways more unsettling. A black hole does not terrify because it disobeys physics. It terrifies because it fulfills physics to the extreme. 3I Atlas, by contrast, terrified because it seemed to refuse narrative. It was not loud, not spectacular. It was mute, indifferent, and in its silence, it mocked our hunger for answers. The object became a mirror, reflecting human uncertainty. Were we truly ready to confront the possibility that not everything in the heavens is accidental? That some motions might be written not only by nature, but by hands we have never seen? For the cautious, such ideas were dismissed as overreach, the product of imagination strained by novelty. But the unease lingered. For every model that painted it as mere stone, there remained the whisper that it was more. In its refusal to behave, 3I Atlas did not break physics. It broke comfort, and in that fracture, it revealed how fragile certainty can be when the unknown passes close enough to touch our sky. To confront the enigma of 3I Atlas, astronomers turned to their tools, the great sentinels of the modern sky. Telescopes on mountaintops and in orbit strained to capture every photon from the fleeting visitor. Among the first was Pan-STARRS, the powerful survey instrument in Hawaii, whose panoramic gaze had also contributed to the discovery of Oumuamua years earlier. Its wide-field optics tracked the faint dot against the tapestry of stars, building a fragile light curve out of whispers of brightness. Hubble, too, was enlisted. The space telescope, orbiting far above Earth's turbulent atmosphere, had the precision to refine the object's trajectory and glean faint spectral hints from its reflected sunlight. But 3I Atlas was small, dim, and swift. Each observation was a struggle against time. Its speed meant it never lingered in one patch of sky. Its faintness meant exposures had to be long, balanced delicately against motion that blurred its image. Still, Hubble's eye gathered what little could be caught, as though scooping shadows into a jar. Ground-based observatories across the world joined the effort. The European Southern Observatory's instruments in Chile, the twin Keck telescopes in Hawaii, even amateur astronomers with high-end equipment all turned their gaze toward the fading traveler. Data was pooled, compared, layered together into a mosaic of incomplete truths. What emerged was not clarity, but paradox. Spectral analysis hinted at a surface neither wholly cometary nor wholly asteroidal. Its reflectivity sat in a liminal space, neither the dark carbon black of inert rock nor the glistening brightness of fresh ice. It was something in between, a contradiction embodied in numbers. The faintness of the object amplified the mystery. Astronomers are accustomed to interpreting rich datasets, tails glowing with emission lines, surfaces resolved by radar. Here, they were left with almost nothing. A few dozen points of brightness, plotted across nights, stitched into models that strained credibility. And yet, even from such scarcity, the unease persisted. This was no ordinary comet. Instruments sharpened focus, but the answers blurred. Each attempt to pin down composition returned ambiguity. Was the surface covered in complex organics, baked by cosmic radiation? Was it metal-rich, a fragment of a shattered core? Or the unsettling possibility that some whispered in conference corridors, was it coated in something manufactured, something smooth, something designed to endure? The act of measurement became philosophical. Science thrives on abundance, on data that overwhelms doubt. Here, science had only absence, and absence itself became the datum. No gas, no tail, no familiar spectrum. The silence of 3I Atlas was as loud as any signal. The telescopes watched until the faint point slipped away, dimming into invisibility. Each photon caught was precious, a last ember carried from a fire already gone. Together, the instruments had done all they could, and yet they left behind more uncertainty than clarity. What had been revealed? That 3I Atlas was small, swift, alien to our Sunday, that its surface was enigmatic, its shape irregular, its behavior defiant, and beyond those truths, only mystery. Tools had sharpened their gaze, but the object had slipped through their grasp like water through a net. With every instrument turned toward it, astronomers hoped for patterns, for reassuring regularities that might anchor 3I Atlas within the catalogues of the known. Instead, they were left with silence, punctuated by riddles. The data contained not what they sought, but what was missing. The gaps themselves became the story. Ordinary comets announced their presence with fanfare, their spectra brim with chemical lines, water vapor, carbon monoxide, cyanide, each molecule singing its note in the great orchestra of sunlight. But 3I Atlas was mute. The detectors strained, and yet the familiar emissions were absent. It reflected light, yes, but spoke no chemistry, gave no voice to its composition. Even the brightness curves, so carefully plotted, were stubbornly elusive. Where astronomers expected neat periodicity, they found erratic flickers. The object brightened without warning, dimmed without rhythm, as though its spin were tangled or its surface mottled in ways that defied simple models. Each attempt to fit the data left residuals, errors that hinted at unseen complexity. It was as if the object itself resisted translation into numbers, refusing to be tamed by equations. Then came the disquieting realization. No one could say with confidence how large it was. Without a tail, without clear reflective benchmarks, estimates varied wildly. Some models placed it at only a few dozen meters. Others suggested it stretched hundreds. Its size, its mass, even its true shape remained ghosts of inference. The object passed through the most technologically advanced observational network in human history, and yet it slipped away with no firm identity, a cipher disguised as stone. The gaps were more haunting than data. A missing tail, a missing spectrum, a missing rhythm. Together they formed a portrait not of presence, but of refusal. Scientists began to speak of it in paradoxes: a comet without outgassing, a rock without clarity, a body without measure. Each absence cut against expectation, each silence louder than a signal. For some, this was simply the humility of astronomy. Not every visitor can be known. Distance and faintness are merciless limits, and most mysteries dissolve into the night without yielding their truth. But for others, the gaps invited speculation. What if the silences were not natural, but intentional? What if the absence of expected signatures was itself a signature? The universe does not owe us patterns, yet humans are compelled to seek them, and when they are missing, we invent stories. In the case of 3I Atlas, those stories began to lean toward the extraordinary. If it was natural, it was unlike anything catalogued before. If it was not, then perhaps the gaps, the silences, the missing signals were the marks of something built to hide, an object crafted not to announce, but to slip past unnoticed, leaving only questions in its wake. And so, in the ledger of astronomy, 3I Atlas was recorded not for what it revealed, but for what it withheld. Its legacy was absence, and absence too can be evidence. As the silence of 3I Atlas lingered, theorists filled the void with models. If it was not behaving like a comet, perhaps its substance itself was extraordinary. One suggestion was exotic matter, not exotic in the sense of science fiction, but in the technical vocabulary of physics material uncommon to our solar system, shaped by processes beyond our reach. Some speculated about hydrogen ice. In theory, a body composed largely of frozen hydrogen could sublimate invisibly, releasing thrust without leaving a detectable coma. This had been proposed for Oumuamua as well, though the plausibility was thin. Hydrogen is fragile, and over millions of years it should have evaporated entirely under cosmic radiation. Still, the idea lingered a way to explain acceleration without tails, propulsion without visibility. Another model imagined a fragment of nitrogen ice sheared from the crust of a distant Pluto-like world. Such a shard, reflective and smooth, could mimic the strange glints observed. Yet here too, objections arose. Could such a fragment survive a journey of light years? Wouldn't erosion by interstellar dust reduce it to nothing before it ever reached our skies? Beyond these natural hypotheses, more audacious ideas took shape. What if 3I Atlas was not a chunk of rock at all, but a thin sheet, a sail? Radiation pressure from the sun could explain its motion. A solar sail, drifting silently, would need no outgassing, no cometary behavior, and unlike natural debris, it would retain its thinness, its geometry, in defiance of erosion. The notion of reflective mysteries spread. Could it be a shard of an alien megastructure, a sliver torn from some ancient machine, or perhaps a probe designed to blend into the silence of space, reflecting just enough light to remain visible to the curious? Mainstream journals hesitated to indulge such speculation. Science, cautious by necessity, leaned toward explanations that preserved the ordinary. Yet whispers of alien engineering crept through interviews, conferences, late-night discussions. The absence of data allowed imagination to bloom unchecked. What made these theories compelling was not only the anomalies, but the history of precedent. Again and again, the universe had proven stranger than human expectations. Black holes once dismissed as fantasy, exoplanets once deemed improbable, cosmic acceleration once unthinkable. Why should interstellar visitors conform to our comfort? In the reflective silence of 3I Atlas, astronomers faced a choice: dismiss the strangeness as statistical fluke, or entertain the possibility that these interstellar shards were revealing a category not yet in our textbooks. Exotic matter, alien sails, fractured machines, each theory stretched the imagination, yet each was tethered, however faintly, to the data. The object itself offered no answers. It passed on, turning in its tumble, catching sunlight in ways that mocked our interpretations. All that remained were the models, speculative scaffolds built to reach a mystery already gone. And in those models, something deeper stirred. They were not just attempts to explain one rock in the sky. They were rehearsals for a larger question: what happens when the universe shows us something we cannot yet name? The question had lingered since Oumuamua. Could such an object be more than mere stone? With 3I Atlas, the whisper grew louder, impossible to ignore. Among the scientific community, most held fast to natural explanations, but the very anomalies that defied those models gave space for speculation. What if this was not a shard of cosmic debris, but an artifact? What if it was a spacecraft? The idea was not born in the public imagination alone. A few voices within academia dared to consider it openly. If an interstellar civilization had ever explored the galaxy, their probes might look like this small, thin, silent blending into the background of natural wanderers. The elegance of such a disguise was almost unnerving. A sail drifting between stars would appear to telescopes exactly as 3I Atlas did, faint, elusive, too fast to catch. The silence of its passage only sharpened the intrigue. It emitted no radio signals, no intentional beacons. Yet what if that was the point? A probe might be designed to observe quietly, to pass unnoticed, to watch rather than announce. Humanity's own spacecraft, voyagers, pioneers, new horizons, sail outward, even now in silence, no longer transmitting, drifting as relics. To another civilization, they would appear as mute, enigmatic, as 3I Atlas appeared to us. Philosophers of science warned against anthropocentric projection, yet the parallels were haunting. If humans build probes that drift between stars, why should others not have done the same? The galaxy is ancient. Civilizations could rise and fall countless times before ours ever looked up. Their machines might still be out there, drifting like messages in bottles, carried by trajectories that span millennia. Still, caution reigned. The scientific method requires restraint, demands natural explanations before extraordinary ones. Yet even within that discipline, the fact that credible scientists had entertained the idea of alien craft marked a subtle shift. It was not an assertion, but an opening. The door of possibility had been nudged, however slightly. In the corridors of conferences, the phrase alien probe moved like a ghost. For some, it was a taboo, a distraction from serious inquiry. For others, it was a reminder that science is not only about answers, but about courage, the courage to let questions linger even when they border on the forbidden. 3I Atlas offered no confirmation. It remained indifferent, tumbling into the dark, carrying its silence as its only testimony. But in that silence, the speculation took root. If it was a spacecraft, then it had passed us by without a word, leaving only the faintest trace of its existence. If it was not, then it was still something that unsettled our categories, something that hinted the universe contains forms we are only beginning to recognize. Either way, the whisper endured. The possibility of an alien probe was not disproven. It could not be disproven. And that was enough to haunt the imagination, enough to bend the narrative of discovery toward mystery. 3I Atlas had become not just a rock in the sky, but a question. And questions, once asked, are never forgotten. Once the question of artificiality had been whispered, the next step was inevitable: listening. If 3I Atlas was not simply a rock but a craft, might it not carry a signal? For decades, The search for extraterrestrial intelligence SETI had scanned the skies for radio transmissions, hunting for patterns in the cosmic static. Now, with an interstellar body sliding through our solar system, SETI turned its ears toward it. Observatories with massive dishes, such as the Green Bank Telescope in West Virginia and the Allen Telescope Array in California, tuned their receivers to the frequencies most likely to carry artificial signals. They swept across radio bands, searching for narrow-beam transmissions, repeating pulses, or anything that stood apart from the background hiss of the cosmos. The task was monumental, distinguishing a whisper from the roar of the galaxy, while the target itself moved rapidly against the sky. The result was silence. No pings, no pulses, no whispers of encoded intelligence. If 3 Atlas was a machine, it was not speaking, at least not in ways humanity could hear. For many scientists, this was confirmation of its natural origin. Machines announce themselves, the reasoning went, they do not glide mute. Yet SETI researchers knew better than to draw easy conclusions. The absence of evidence was not evidence of absence. An artifact could operate in ways invisible to human senses, transmit on frequencies we cannot detect, or remain purposefully quiet. After all, silence can be strategy. Some within the community drew a haunting parallel. Earth itself has launched probes into the void, Voyager, Pioneer, New Horizons, each carrying only a faint, finite radio signal. In time, those signals will fade, and the machines will drift wordless through the stars. To any other civilization, they will appear as mute rocks, moving swiftly, reflecting sunlight without declaration. Would another intelligence, encountering Voyager in a distant system, not face the same dilemma? Would they not ask if it was mere debris or a messenger long abandoned? SETI's silence, then, did not end speculation. It refined it. If 3i Atlas was artificial, perhaps it was derelict, a husk of technology adrift for millennia. Or perhaps it was never meant to speak. Perhaps its mission, if mission it had, was to observe in secrecy, to slip through unnoticed. In that light, the absence of radio chatter was not dismissal, but deepening mystery. The listening continued until the object faded beyond reach, its faint light swallowed by distance. SETI recorded its silence, adding it to decades of unanswered scans. To many, this was a familiar story. The cosmos remains mute, even when we beg it to speak. But to others, the silence of 3i Atlas was not emptiness. It was presence, the presence of a possibility unclosed. In the end, humanity did what it always does when faced with the unknown. It kept listening. The instruments turned away. The visitor vanished. But the ears of our civilization remain open, straining against the static, waiting for the day when silence yields to a voice. As theories multiplied, one stood out for its elegance, the solar sail hypothesis. If 3i Atlas were not a natural shard but a thin sheet, then the pressure of sunlight itself could explain its trajectory. Photons, though massless, carry momentum. When they strike a surface, they impart the faintest push. On ordinary rocks, the effect is negligible, but on something broad and wafer-thin, light can become a wind and the object a sail. This idea had already been proposed for Oumuamua. Its puzzling acceleration, unexplained by outgassing, might have been the work of radiation pressure. For years, physicists had entertained the concept of light-driven craft. Japan's Ikaros mission had demonstrated a solar sail in 2010, unfurling thin membranes in space to harness sunlight as propulsion. The Planetary Society's light sail projects had followed, small but profound experiments proving that photons could indeed carry ships across the void. If humanity had already tested sails, could another civilization not have mastered them long before? A sail drifting through interstellar space, would appear precisely as 3I Atlas appeared. Faint, tumbling, without coma or tail. It would require no fuel, no visible exhaust. Its journey could last millennia, carrying it between stars with only the patience of light. The light curves of 3I Atlas even seem to whisper this possibility. A thin sheet, reflecting sunlight unevenly as it tumbled, could account for the peculiar flickers recorded. Its shape would be unlike ordinary comets, more planar than round, more sail than stone, and if such sails existed, they might not be unique. They could be relics scattered across the galaxy, waiting for chance discovery. But the hypothesis carried its own weight of doubt. Could a sail survive the rigors of interstellar space? Cosmic dust and radiation batter thin films relentlessly. Over millions of years, would they not shred to tatters? For some, this fragility was proof against the idea. For others, it suggested something more haunting, that if the sail still survived, it must be built of materials far beyond our understanding, alloys or composites alien to our laboratories. The solar sail hypothesis walked a razor's edge between plausibility and wonder. It was both scientific and poetic. Photons as wind, stars as engines, space as an ocean. If 3I Atlas were truly such a sail, then it was more than an object. It was a message, a proof that the dream of light-driven travel was not confined to Earth, but shared across the galaxy. And even if it was not, the fact that serious scientists considered the possibility marked a threshold. The cosmos had grown strange enough that alien engineering was no longer a fantasy whispered in pulp novels, but a hypothesis placed alongside natural models in the journals of astronomy. Thus, 3I Atlas became, in imagination if not in fact, a sail, a possibility that drifted as silently as the object itself, gliding on beams of sunlight, propelled by nothing more than the patience of time and the boundless curiosity it left in its wake. Once the idea of a solar sail was raised, a deeper question followed. If it was a sail, who set it adrift? This speculation unfolded into the field some call cosmic archaeology, the search not for living civilizations, but for their relics. Just as ruins on Earth tell stories of cultures long vanished, so too might the galaxy contain remnants of beings who once thrived, but are now gone. 3I Atlas, silent and inert, could be such a relic. In this light, its silence was not puzzling but expected. A probe sent thousands or millions of years ago might no longer transmit, its systems long since dead. It would endure only as a husk, drifting endlessly between stars. And to those who discovered it, it would look exactly like this, a faint point of light, irregular in brightness, mysterious in form, offering no signal but its mere existence. Cosmic archaeology reframes the search for intelligence. Instead of waiting for radio messages, it urges us to look for artifacts, derelict spacecraft, fragments of technology, even debris fields scattered through interstellar space. Just as Voyager and Pioneer will one day become relics of Earth's age of exploration, so too might countless civilizations have seeded the galaxy with remnants of their journeys. If so, 3I Atlas might not be unique. It could be one of many such relics, passing unnoticed until our instruments grow sensitive enough to find them. Each interstellar visitor could be a shard of cosmic history, some natural, some artificial, all drifting testaments to the turbulence of creation and the impermanence of civilizations. The thought carried weight beyond science. To imagine 3I Atlas as an artifact was to confront our own future. One day, long after humanity is gone, our probes will still wander. Voyager's golden record, Pioneer's plaque, light sail's membranes all may persist, mute but enduring, slipping through alien skies. To another intelligence, they will appear as enigmas, just as 3i Atlas appears to us now. Perhaps the galaxy is not silent after all. Perhaps it is filled with relics, messages too faint for us to recognize, artifacts mistaken for rocks. Cosmic archaeology suggests that we already live in a museum without walls, a museum so vast we cannot yet see its exhibits. And so, 3i Atlas becomes more than a scientific puzzle. It becomes a mirror of time. If it is natural, it reminds us that planetary systems scatter their debris freely, leaving behind the fossils of their formation. If it is artificial, it whispers that civilizations, too, scatter their traces, machines adrift, monuments forgotten, relics waiting for others to stumble upon. Either way, it is evidence of continuity, of stars birthing worlds, of worlds casting fragments, of minds launching vessels, of stories written into matter and sent adrift through eternity. To watch 3i Atlas fade was to realize that we may not be the first to ask questions of the stars, nor will we be the last. The cosmos remembers, even if civilizations do not. For decades, the silence of the stars has carried a name, the Fermi paradox. If the galaxy is old, if stars have birthed planets for billions of years, if life has had time to arise and evolve countless times, then where are they? Where are the signals, the ships, the unmistakable evidence of intelligence? The paradox is not merely silence, it is the mismatch between expectation and reality. Into that silence came Oumuamua, then Borisov, and now 3i Atlas. Each one carried a whisper of possibility, but especially the first and third, which refused to behave like ordinary comets. To some, these were not coincidences but provocations. Perhaps the paradox is not silence at all, but camouflage. Perhaps civilizations have indeed sent emissaries, but they do not look like what we expect. If probes are disguised as rocks, they would escape our notice. If they drift in silence, without signals, we would call them debris. The very act of searching for comets and asteroids might bring us into contact with them, only for us to dismiss their anomalies as quirks of nature. What if the answer to Fermi's question, "Where are they?" is simply this: they have passed us by, and we failed to recognize them. 3i Atlas seemed to embody this possibility. It was an object that appeared alien in the literal sense from beyond our sun, carrying no tail, showing no clear identity. If humanity had not been watching with modern instruments, it would have gone unnoticed, a ghost slipping through our sky. If it was a probe, it was one that mocked our assumptions, proving the paradox not with absence, but with presence too easily overlooked. The thought unsettled many. If such objects were probes, then they might not be rare. The galaxy could be seeded with them, relics of exploration that pass near every star in time. The paradox then would not be a silence of civilizations, but a silence of recognition. We are listening for signals, while the messages are drifting past our eyes. Yet others argued the opposite. If even these enigmatic visitors are nothing but stone, then perhaps the paradox is sharper than ever. Perhaps life is rare, intelligence rarer still, and the interstellar travelers we glimpse are only the fragments of chaos, not the signs of order. In this tension lay the power of 3i Atlas. It did not solve the paradox, but it sharpened it. Its silence could be camouflage, or it could be emptiness. Its presence could be a clue or a mockery. To call it alien was true, but only in origin. To call it alien, in the deeper sense, was speculation. Still, the resonance with the paradox was undeniable. Each interstellar object we find reopens Fermi's question. Each one forces us to ask if we are alone, or if we are simply too limited, too blind to recognize company when it passes us by. As scientists wrestled with the enigma of 3i Atlas, others looked outward toward theories even broader than alien probes or cosmic relics. Perhaps the strangeness of interstellar visitors was not technological, but cosmological. Perhaps their very existence whispered of deeper structures in reality itself. One proposal drew from cosmic inflation, the idea that our universe ballooned outward in its earliest moments, scattering not only galaxies but also debris across unimaginable expanses. Objects like 3I Atlas, then, could be the fossils of that primordial scattering, fragments from worlds we can no longer trace, drifting endlessly between stars or even between universes. Some physicists turn to the multiverse hypothesis. If countless universes exist, separated by quantum boundaries, could interstellar objects be messengers from those other realms? It was speculative, almost mystical, yet it carried a peculiar resonance. 3I Atlas had already broken boundaries by arriving from beyond the Sunday. Might it also hint at boundaries, even greater borders of universes themselves? Others invoked the idea of false vacuum decay, the fragile possibility that our universe is perched in a metastable state, a bubble of reality that could collapse into a deeper energy state at any moment. If such transitions occur, they might scatter debris across the cosmic foam. Could 3I Atlas be such debris, not simply alien to the solar system, but alien to our very universe's stability? The language became metaphor as much as science. Some described these visitors as cosmic flotsam, washed ashore from shipwrecks in universes beyond our own. Others saw them as breadcrumbs on a path we do not yet know how to follow, fragments that suggest our physics is incomplete, our understanding partial. And always the mystery deepened. For whether natural or artificial, comet or craft, each explanation seemed to demand something larger than itself. If natural, then our models of interstellar debris must expand beyond comfort. If artificial, then intelligence has left its traces. If cosmological, then the very fabric of reality may be stranger than imagined. In the poetic silence of 3I Atlas, speculation bloomed not only about other civilizations, but about other worlds entirely. Theories stretched outward like sails, catching the winds of imagination, carrying human thought beyond the narrow cage of a single solar system. And yet, the object itself remained mute. It offered no proof, no final word, only a trajectory and a fading point of light. Into that silence, humanity projected its deepest questions about life, about reality, about the multiverse itself. 3I Atlas became not just an interstellar traveler, but a metaphor, a reminder that the universe is vast, layered, and perhaps woven with secrets that may forever escape us. The enigma of 3I Atlas sparked not only theories, but ambitions. If such objects were going to pass through the solar system more often than once imagined, why not prepare to meet them directly? The idea of an interceptor mission began to take shape. Space agencies and independent researchers floated proposals. A probe launched not after discovery, but before, lying in wait like a sentry in deep orbit. When the next interstellar visitor was spotted, the probe could be diverted onto an intercept course, racing to meet the traveler while it still lingered within range. Such a mission would need speed, flexibility, and instruments designed for fleeting encounters, spectrometers, cameras, dust collectors, perhaps even harpoons to snatch fragments from the passing body. The concept was more than a dream. Studies under the European Space Agency explored projects like Comet Interceptor, a mission originally designed to study a pristine comet, but adaptable, in principle, to an interstellar object. NASA too considered the possibilities, sketching scenarios in which fast response missions could intercept future wanderers. Each passing visitor, like 3I Atlas, underscored the urgency. The opportunity comes once and never returns. Ideas grew bolder still. What if fleets of tiny spacecraft, Swarms of nanosats propelled by solar sails or ion engines were stationed at vantage points in the solar system, ready to launch in pursuit. Such swarms could converge on an intruder, surrounding it, mapping it from all angles, peering into its secrets. The goals were clear: to measure composition directly, to scan surfaces at close range, to listen for electromagnetic emissions, to test whether these visitors are stone, ice, or something else, to hold in human instruments what telescopes could only glimpse from afar. But obstacles loomed. The velocities involved were immense. By the time an object like 3I Atlas is discovered, it is already plunging through the inner solar system at tens of kilometers per second. Designing a probe that can both launch swiftly and match such speed is a technological mountain. Without prior warning, interception is nearly impossible. And yet, hope persists. With telescopes like the upcoming Vera C. Rubin Observatory set to scan the skies with unprecedented sensitivity, more interstellar visitors will likely be detected earlier. That advance warning could provide the window needed to launch a chaser. For now, missions remain sketches on paper, proposals in journals, dreams in the minds of engineers. But the urgency has been set. 3I Atlas reminded humanity that these messengers will not wait for us. They pass once, and they are gone. To grasp their truth, we must be ready not after discovery, but before. The idea of intercepting one of these travelers is more than scientific curiosity. It is symbolic, a gesture of will, of civilization reaching out to shake hands with the galaxy. Whether the next visitor is mere debris or something more, the act of meeting it face to face would mark a turning point, humanity choosing not to simply watch the unknown drift past, but to chase it, to question it, to confront mystery with presence. The dream of interception met the harsh weight of reality. Even as proposals filled conference halls and academic papers, the technical barriers loomed like mountains. To chase an interstellar object is to attempt pursuit of a ghost already fleeing. By the time telescopes detect one, it is already deep within the solar system, already moving at tens of kilometers per second, already vanishing. The physics is merciless. Rockets must accelerate not just to catch the object, but to match its velocity enough to linger nearby. That requires fuel far beyond current capacities. Even the fastest missions humanity has ever built New Horizons racing past Pluto, the Parker Solar Probe diving toward the Sun, move at only fractions of the speed required to keep pace with something like 3I Atlas. Time compounds the difficulty. Discoveries are sudden, and launch windows close almost instantly. It would take years to design, build, and prepare a probe, years we do not have once an object is spotted. Unless such missions are built and waiting in advance, ready to launch at a moment's notice, interception is almost impossible. There is also the problem of distance. Interstellar objects do not remain near Earth for long. Within months, sometimes weeks, they fade beyond the reach of telescopes. To send a spacecraft after them is like trying to catch a feather blown past a window when the feather is already carried by a hurricane into the horizon. Even if a mission could be launched, the instruments themselves would face limits. A fleeting flyby at extreme speed would offer only moments of observation. A probe might capture a few images, a handful of spectra, perhaps a dust sample snatched in passing data, precious but painfully incomplete. The dream of studying one in detail, of orbiting it, of landing upon it, lies far beyond current engineering. For now, humanity remains grounded in observation from afar. We build better telescopes, refine faster detectors, sharpen our ability to notice. But the frontier of direct contact remains just out of reach, like the visitor itself slipping into darkness. And yet, even this recognition has its own poetry. It reminds us of our infancy, of how new we are to the galactic stage. We are children watching giants pass by, unable to follow, only able to point and wonder. The frustration is profound, but it is also motivation. Every limitation is an invitation to grow, to invent, to reach further than before. The impossibility of intercepting 3I Atlas became a symbol not of failure, but of the future. One day, perhaps centuries from now, humanity may build engines that can leap across the solar system in days, not years. One day, we may have fleets waiting, sails spread, ready to meet whatever approaches. Until then, we are reminded of humility. We are not yet ready to grasp the messengers that slip between stars. We can only watch them pass, shadows in our night, and imagine what truths they might carry. If spacecraft could not yet chase 3I Atlas, then perhaps the answer lay in sharper eyes. Telescopes, after all, are our first line of contact with the unknown, and a new generation was already rising on the horizon. Chief among them, the Vera C. Rubin Observatory in Chile promised to transform astronomy's relationship with the transient sky. Scheduled to begin operations in the mid-2022, Rubin's Legacy Survey of Space and Time, LSST, would sweep the heavens with unprecedented depth and frequency. Every few nights, its wide-field camera, the largest ever built, would capture the entire visible sky. Such vigilance meant that objects like 3I Atlas, faint and fast, would no longer slip through unnoticed. They would be spotted earlier, tracked longer, their secrets pried open with more time to react. Then there was the James Webb Space Telescope, already proving its power by peering into the atmospheres of distant exoplanets and the first galaxies after the Big Bang. For interstellar visitors, Webb's instruments offered the possibility of direct compositional analysis, teasing out the fingerprints of surface materials or ices too subtle for ground-based observatories. Beyond them, more ambitious instruments loomed in design. The extremely large telescope rising in the Atacama Desert, the 30-meter telescope proposed for Mauna Kea, even space-based observatories of the future that might dwarf Hubble and Webb combined. Each represented not only sharper vision but wider reach, able to catch fainter signals and trace trajectories earlier. With such tools, astronomers dreamed of a new kind of astronomy, not passive observation of fixed stars, but dynamic tracking of the wanderers. A discipline devoted to interstellar archaeology, watching as each new messenger from beyond swept through, recording its motion, its spectrum, its every flicker of light. The promise of future telescopes was not only technical but philosophical. For centuries, humanity had imagined itself isolated, our solar system, a closed room. Now, with each new detection, the walls dissolved. We lived not in isolation but on a crossroads, where travelers passed through unseen until our instruments grew sharp enough to notice. The Rubin Observatory, Webb, and their successors promised to open that crossroads, to let us stand at the window with clarity, no longer straining, no longer guessing. Still, telescopes alone could not solve the mystery. They could see, but not touch, measure, but not intercept. Yet in their expanded vision lay hope that the next interstellar object would not slip away so quickly, that we would have more time, more data, more answers. 3I Atlas had passed into darkness, but it had left behind a challenge. Build the eyes, sharpen the gaze, prepare for the next. The galaxy is not silent. It is passing by, in fragments, in visitors, in mysteries disguised as stones. Our instruments are the keys, and with each new telescope, the locks begin to turn. Amid the debates over telescopes, sails, and relics, a quieter line of thought emerged, one that looked not at engineering, but at the foundations of physics itself. Could the mystery of 3I Atlas be a symptom not of technology, but of reality? Quantum mechanics teaches that at the smallest scales, certainty dissolves. Position and momentum cannot both be pinned down. Particles exist in superposition, probabilities layered like whispers in the dark. Gravity, by contrast, speaks in the rigid voice of general relativity, describing orbits, curves, and trajectories with unyielding precision. For a century, physics has struggled to reconcile these voices. Perhaps, some suggested, anomalies like 3I Atlas were faint reminders that the reconciliation has not yet come. Its path was hyperbolic, yes, but its spin, brightness, and silence carried irregularities that defied easy classification. What if these irregularities were not mere observational gaps, but hints of processes beneath our models? Could radiation pressure behave differently on materials unknown to us? Could quantum effects, scaled upward in ways we do not yet grasp, leave signatures in the dance of an interstellar body? Such questions sounded speculative, yet history gave reason to pause. The orbit of Mercury once defied Newton's equations until Einstein's relativity revealed the deeper structure of spacetime. Could 3I Atlas be a modern Mercury, an object whose strangeness was less about itself than about the incompleteness of our theories? Others looked to dark matter and dark energy, the unseen scaffolding of the cosmos. If 95% of the universe is hidden, could interstellar visitors carry traces of that hidden majority? Could their motion reveal subtle interactions with forces we have not yet mapped? A probe, whether natural or artificial, might be less significant than the physics it exposes, the silent tug of fields not yet known. Even quantum philosophy entered the conversation. Was the very act of observing such an object a kind of entanglement, binding us briefly to a traveler from another star? Did its passage remind us that we too are particles in a larger wave function, subject to probabilities beyond comprehension? These speculations did not claim answers, nor did they pretend certainty. They did what anomalies have always done, widened the frame. They reminded humanity that science is not a fortress of finished truths, but a horizon always receding. In the end, 3I Atlas may have been no more than stone, but in its refusal to yield familiar signals, it nudged us toward humility. Perhaps the mystery was not only in the object itself, but in the unfinished nature of physics, a whisper that the cosmos still holds laws unspoken, equations unwritten, truths waiting in the quiet spaces between the stars. Beyond the numbers, beyond the orbital charts and spectral graphs, there lingered something that science alone could not contain: the weight of time, the echo of silence. 3I Atlas was not just a body in motion, it was an encounter with the unknown, and encounters reshape not only equations but emotions. Philosophers and poets turned their gaze toward it. If it was merely rock, then its journey still spanned light years, a testament to the persistence of matter through endless dark. If it was artifact, then it was a ghost of minds beyond ours, a relic of intentions we may never decipher. In either case, it became a mirror held up to humanity, reflecting both our curiosity and our fragility. Time itself seemed to hum through its trajectory. Here was an object older than civilizations, older than continents, perhaps older than the solar system itself. It had wandered for eons through the interstellar void, untouched, unseen, until one fleeting moment when human eyes caught it against the stars. That moment, brief, accidental, fragile, carried the philosophical weight of contact, even if the contact was only with mystery itself. And then there was silence, not the silence of nothingness, but the silence of a withheld answer. It neither confirmed nor denied our speculation. It offered no signal, no tale, no voice. It came, it passed, it vanished, leaving us to fill the void with questions. That silence pressed against the human heart, reminding us that the universe is under no obligation to explain itself. What does it mean to live in a cosmos where such visitors pass unannounced? Does it humble us to know how small our instruments are, how brief our chance to observe? Or does it awaken us to know that we are already in dialogue with the galaxy, even if the dialogue is one-sided, even if the reply is silence? Philosophical reflection transforms anomaly into symbol. 3. Atlas became not only an astronomical body, but a meditation on existence. Its path was a brushstroke across the canvas of space-time, and in its fading light we saw ourselves, seekers, dreamers, listeners in the dark, hungry for meaning. The object was gone, but the silence it left behind endured, stretching into the human imagination like a horizon without end. It was not an absence, but a question, and in that question lay the essence of what it means to be alive in a universe vast enough to hide its truths. For scientists, 3I Atlas was an object of study. For philosophers, it was a symbol of uncertainty. But for ordinary people, for anyone who looked up at the sky and heard the news of an interstellar visitor, it was something far more primal: awe. Awe is a rare emotion, born when the human mind confronts what it cannot contain. The sight of a mountain range, the hush of an ocean, the first glimpse of Earth from orbit, these evoke awe because they stretch the boundaries of perception. 3I Atlas carried the same effect, though unseen by most. Its very existence struck chords deep within the imagination. Here was proof that the universe is not empty. Here was evidence that the gulf between stars is not an impenetrable wall, but a highway of travelers, rocks, ice, perhaps even machines moving unseen through the dark. To know that something from another star had passed so close was to feel small but also connected, part of a larger story written in interstellar ink. The awe was sharpened by impermanence. 3. Atlas was here for only a moment, and then it was gone, vanishing into the deep night. Humanity could not hold it, could not measure it fully, could not learn all its secrets. This fleetingness was not a flaw, but part of its power. The very fact that it escaped us made its presence feel sacred, like a rare visitor in a temple who leaves before a word can be spoken. The public imagination, fueled by headlines, seized upon the possibility of aliens. Was it a spacecraft, a probe, a message? Even those who dismissed such ideas found themselves caught by wonder. For in asking those questions, humanity was reminded of its own longing, the desire to not be alone, the yearning for contact, for meaning beyond Earth. Awe also carried a quiet fear. If visitors can arrive unannounced, what else might come? Could danger ride alongside mystery? The thought was unsettling, yet even this fear was woven with fascination. It was the same fear that has always attended the unknown, the fear of the forest at night, the fear of the horizon at sea. But mostly, 3I Atlas inspired reflection. People stood beneath the same stars and felt their own lives measured against a timeline vast beyond comprehension. A single object, no larger than a mountain, had crossed gulfs of space for millions of years, only to flicker through our sky in a blink of history. What were human struggles, human triumphs, compared to such journeys? And yet, what a triumph it was that we noticed at all that frail creatures on a small world had built eyes sharp enough to glimpse it, even briefly. In its passage, 3I Atlas revealed not only the vastness of the cosmos, but the vastness within ourselves, the capacity to feel wonder, to confront mystery, to be humbled and uplifted in the same breath. That was its gift. As 3I Atlas receded into the darkness, a sobering thought grew louder among astronomers and philosophers alike. What if it was only debris? What if all the speculation, sails, probes, relics was merely projection, the human tendency to embroider mystery with meaning? If so, then 3I Atlas was still extraordinary, but in a different way. It would not be the whisper of alien minds, but the echo of alien worlds. A shard, perhaps, torn from a distant planet during its violent birth. A fragment flung outward by gravitational battles between newborn giants. A relic of collisions, the kind that shaped our own Earth, Moon, and planets in the chaos of their youth. As cosmic debris, it spoke not of civilizations, but of processes that bind all stars together. Every planetary system sheds fragments. Every orbiting body is shaped by violence. Over billions of years, trillions of such shards must have been cast adrift, filling the galaxy with silent voyagers. That we have now begun to notice them is itself a revelation. We are at last part of the galactic conversation, even if the conversation is with stone. There is humility in this interpretation. To admit that 3I Atlas may be nothing more than debris is to recognize the grandeur of nature itself. No intelligence need be invoked to produce mystery. Physics alone can sculpt shapes that confound us, motions that unsettle us, silences that echo louder than words. And yet, the debris hypothesis carries its own quiet poetry. If 3I Atlas is merely a shard, then we held in our telescopes not the work of intelligence, but the memory of distant suns. That rock was once warmed by a star not our own. It may have orbited a world alien to Earth, grazed the rings of a foreign giant, or been cast away by forces we will never witness. To see it was to glimpse history written beyond our sky. In this light, even natural debris becomes profound. Each fragment is a messenger, carrying the geology of other worlds into our neighborhood. Each one is proof that planetary systems are not isolated, but bleed into one another, sharing their stones like seeds scattered by the wind. If 3I Atlas was only debris, then it was still a story worth telling. A story of stars that make planets, of planets that break and collide, of shards that wander across gulfs of space until, by chance, they pass before our eyes. To call it debris is not to diminish it. It is to place it within the great chain of cosmic history, a link that connects us to places we cannot yet see. And perhaps that is enough. Perhaps we do not need it to be a spacecraft to feel wonder. Perhaps wonder resides as much in stone as in signal. Perhaps the debris of the cosmos is itself the greatest message. That we are part of a galaxy alive with motion, with fragments, with silent messengers that drift through our night as reminders of a universe that is vast, patient, and endlessly unfinished. But speculation refused to rest. For every voice that framed 3I Atlas as mere debris, there was another that asked the haunting counter-question: what if it truly was a craft? If so, then the implications spiraled outward with dizzying force. It would mean that we were no longer only observers of interstellar nature, but witnesses to interstellar intention. Somewhere, sometime, a civilization chose to send an object into the void. Whether as probe, relic, or derelict, it would mark the first evidence that intelligence had crossed the gulf between stars. The silence, then, would not be absence but strategy. A craft could choose not to speak. It could be designed to observe, not announce, to pass unnoticed, blending with natural debris. To us, it would look exactly as 3I Atlas did: a tumbling shard, faint, enigmatic, resisting every attempt at classification. Perhaps that was the point: camouflage on a cosmic scale. If it was a craft, then its mission might already be complete. It could have recorded, transmitted, or simply endured its purpose long fulfilled. Perhaps it had been launched millions of years ago, when its creators still flourished. Perhaps those creators are gone, and only their machine survives, wandering without master, the technological fossil of a vanished culture. In that case, 3I Atlas was not only alien technology, but alien history, a drifting ruin in the Museum of the Stars. Others dared to imagine a darker interpretation. What if it was not derelict but active? What if its silence was deliberate surveillance, a way of passing through unseen? To consider this possibility was to confront a profound unease, that the galaxy may not be empty, and that we are not necessarily its firstborn. Such thoughts carried both fear and wonder. Fear, because the presence of intelligence beyond Earth dissolves the fragile illusion of human centrality. Wonder, because it confirms that we are not alone, that thought and creation have bloomed elsewhere in the dark. Both emotions entwined, impossible to separate, each fueling the other. And in this tension lay the true weight of 3I Atlas. If it was a craft, it changed everything not in what we observed, but in what we dared to believe. Even without proof, the possibility itself was transformative. For centuries, humanity has asked whether we are alone. Now, with objects like this slipping through our skies, the question feels less like speculation and more like preparation. Whether derelict relic or deliberate probe, an alien craft in our solar system would mean the galaxy is older, richer, more inhabited than we have dreamed. It would mean that civilizations are not only possible, but enduring their traces woven into the fabric of interstellar space. 3I Atlas offered no answer, but by opening the door to such speculation, it reshaped the way we look at the night sky. Every faint dot of light, every passing visitor, might no longer be just stone. It might be story, intention, memory. It might be company. And then, as quickly as it had appeared, 3I Atlas was gone. It slipped beyond the reach of telescopes, its faint light swallowed by the abyss. Astronomers watched their graphs flatten, their data streams fade to static. The interstellar visitor had left the stage, vanishing into the wings of the galaxy, never to return. Its absence was as haunting as its presence. For months, it had occupied the collective imagination, a small shard of mystery anchoring endless speculation. Then, like a dream at dawn, it dissolved, leaving only traces in memory and mathematics. Its coordinates became predictions of where it might be now, racing outward into infinity, but no eye could follow, no ear could hear. There was an ache in this departure, a recognition of helplessness. Humanity had glimpsed something extraordinary and been unable to hold it. The instruments had caught a few photons, enough to tantalize, never enough to resolve. In its silence and its passing, 3I Atlas revealed the limits of even our most powerful science. We could watch, we could wonder, but we could not know. This lingering absence became almost a character of its own. Conferences carried its name, papers debated its mysteries, artists and writers conjured visions of what it might have been. Yet all such efforts revolved around a void, an object no longer here, an encounter forever incomplete. The very fact of its vanishing made it mythic, like a traveler who visits a village in the night, leaving only footprints in the snow by morning. For astronomers, this absence was not despair, but motivation. They knew more would come. 3I Atlas was not the first, and it would not be the last. Oumuamua had prepared them, Borisov had confirmed the category, and now Atlas had deepened the riddle. The galaxy is filled with wanderers. To miss one was to be reminded that countless others are already on their way. And yet, there was a silence more profound than any data gap, the silence of what it might have been, a comet stripped of volatiles or a probe stripped of purpose, a shard of a shattered world or a machine of forgotten makers. We will never know. Its absence guarantees that. In that absence, humanity is left with reflection. The stars do not wait for us. Their messengers pass on their own schedules, indifferent to our readiness. If we wish to grasp their truths, we must be faster, sharper, more prepared. Until then, the mysteries will continue to vanish into the dark, leaving only absence in their wake. 3I Atlas has become precisely that, an absence made permanent, a silence carried outward, vanishing into a night that will never echo it back. The memory of 3I Atlas lingers not as an answer, but as a question. Its passage was brief, its signals faint, yet it left behind an echo far louder than its light. For in its silence, it taught us something essential. The universe does not speak in clarity. It speaks in riddles, in fleeting glimpses, in silences that force us to imagine. What did we learn? That we are not alone in our solar system's solitude. Fragments from other stars wander through, crossing our paths, reminding us that the galaxy is not distant but intimate, that our instruments, sharpened though they are, remain fragile compared to the scale of time and space. That even in the 21st century, with telescopes reaching back to the dawn of galaxies, we can still be humbled by a shard of matter slipping unnoticed through the night. And perhaps most of all, we learn something about ourselves. Our hunger for meaning, our readiness to ask whether a stone might be a machine, whether silence might be camouflage, whether absence might itself be a message. These reveal the human spirit as much as the cosmos. We are seekers, not content with data alone. We press against the silence, demanding story, demanding company, demanding that the universe share its secrets. 3I Atlas refused. It offered no tail, no spectrum, no signal, no proof. It came and went, a flicker against the stars. And in doing so, it left us with the deepest reflection of all. Perhaps the universe is not waiting to be explained. Perhaps it is waiting to be wondered at. In the end, 3I Atlas was both less and more than a spacecraft. Less because we may never confirm alien intent. More because it revealed the contours of our own curiosity, the restless urge to imagine, to reach, to ask. Its silence was not emptiness but invitation. And so, humanity is left with an unfinished dialogue. Not a message, not a probe, not an encounter, but a reminder that mystery itself is the oldest companion of life beneath the stars. Now, as the story closes, let the pace slow. Imagine the object, 3I Atlas, no longer visible, drifting beyond the reach of telescopes. It moves in silence, carried by momentum alone, tumbling gently through a sea of stars. Around it, the galaxy is vast and patient, a dark ocean lit by distant suns. Breathe in that stillness. Let the questions soften. For tonight, there is no need for answers. The visitor has passed, and with it, the urgency of speculation. What remains is a calm awareness that we are part of a universe alive with motion, alive with mystery, alive with possibilities that stretch far beyond sight. The image fades further until only darkness remains. In that darkness, feel a quiet reassurance. The unknown is not an enemy, it is a companion, walking beside us, teaching us humility. Each unanswered riddle, each fleeting glimpse, is a thread in a larger fabric, one woven not only of science, but of wonder. Let your mind drift with the object, carried by invisible tides. Imagine it passing other stars, grazing unseen worlds, crossing gulfs of space where no eye will ever follow. In its silence lies serenity, a reminder that the cosmos has its own rhythm, slow and eternal. As you rest, let that rhythm steady your breath. Let the vastness above you feel less like distance and more like embrace. Empires rise and fall, lives begin and end, but the stars remain. Their messengers come and go, whispering mysteries, then fading away. Now the night is yours. The questions will wait. Close your eyes and let the silence of 3I Atlas carry you gently into sleep. Sweet dreams.